In this video, we're going to be discussing the 4 different conditions of readiness when carrying a handgun. First off, why is this important? Well, it's important because people often debate and disagree about what is the best condition of readiness when carrying a handgun concealed. Another thing to consider is how do you want to carry your handgun, and oftentimes that can dictate what might be the right types of handgun for you to carry concealed by taking into consideration what kind of conditions you want to carry it under. So before we get into the conditions on the different types of handguns out there, just a little bit of background about how we came about with the conditions. First off, this came about originally from a gentleman named Jeff Cooper, who was a creator of the modern technique, and that included two-handed grip, weaver stance, eye-level sight aiming, of using a handgun for self-defense. Later, he founded an academy which became known as the Gun Sight Academy in Prescott, Arizona, and then he went on to develop a number of different methodologies within the shooting community, including the 4 conditions of readiness, which really is actually 5. And we're going to be talking about those today and what they mean for you. Now, when Jeff Cooper originally came up with the conditions of carrying a handgun, he did so around the 1911, which of course was his favorite and preferred handgun. And that's where we're going to start today, but then we're going to move into the striker-fired handguns, both without manual safeties and with manual safeties, so you can take into consideration what you need to think about when it comes to carrying conditions with each one of these types of handguns. And before we begin, all the ammunition I'm using for this are dummy rounds. So just so you know, every round that I cycle through these guns, when they've all been safety checked already, will be dummy rounds. So just FYI before we begin. So the first condition is what's called level 4 in a 1911. That basically means you have an unloaded handgun. You have an unloaded handgun and a magazine, and they are separate, and there's nothing in the chamber. And this is how you want to store and transport handguns. The condition 3, the next one, is where you have a loaded magazine into the gun but nothing in the chamber. This is what's commonly referred to as Israeli carry. This is condition 3. This basically means that you have to, when you draw your handgun, you have to rack the slide to put a round in before you can engage and fire your weapon. And that's commonly referred to as Israeli carry. There's also what's called, with the 1911, a condition 2, and this is where you have a magazine loaded, a round in the chamber, but then you put the hammer down on the handgun. So in this case, we have a loaded magazine, loaded chamber, hammer down. Now notice what I had to do in order to do that. I had to manually drop the hammer, which is not what the 1911 was designed to do. And a lot of the new 1911s have spurred hammers, so it's very easy in some cases to have that slip and the handgun go off. That's why nobody really recommends, and I don't recommend either, carrying in a condition 2 environment. Now, you might watch shows like, for example, Longmire and others, where you see them walk in and then he'll cock his handgun, right, and be ready to go with his 1911. That might work in Hollywood, but in the reality is it doesn't work in the real world, and it's not something that I would recommend that you do. So moving down, we have what's called condition 1. Condition 1 is where you have a loaded magazine, round in the chamber, hammer's cocked, and then the manual safety is on. This is commonly referred to as cocked and locked. This is how you're going to see most people carrying 1911s today. And then the final condition is what's called condition 0, where your manual safety is off, so now when you pull the trigger, you are ready to fire. That's basically what it comes down to. So condition 1 is when you have the manual safety on, you can't fire it. Condition 0 is when you are ready to fire. Now, some things to consider on a 1911. First off, a lot of people carry 1911s in condition 1s, which is cocked and locked, but some people might not be comfortable with this, especially having a hammer out here. So one of the things that I suggest is, if you want to carry condition 1 and you're concerned about that, you can also buy accessories that help provide more security for you as well. So in this case, for example, I have a holster that has a back strap on it that stands in between the slide and the hammer. And this is how I like to carry my 1911s in condition 1, because it gives me that added comfort of knowing that no matter what happens, that hammer's not going to come down on the gun. And then to break it, you just push your thumb, which is the thumb brake, and then you pull it out. So that's one of the benefits you have of a condition 1, is you have a lot of these great aftermarket holsters, including this DeSantis model out here, which I will link to below. that really work great if you're in a condition 1. However, if you really are not comfortable carrying condition 1 in any types of capacity on a 1911, then you probably just want to go back to going to condition 3, which basically means you have a loaded magazine, nothing in the chamber. But then what that means is you're going to have to train yourself every time you draw your 1911 to use your second hand to be able to charge the weapon and be ready to go. So those are the considerations to think about with your 1911 carrying conditions. Now, some of the more popular handguns on the market today are the striker fires. And the striker fires typically come without and with manual safety. So we're going to talk about the conditions and the considerations here as well. So again, we're using dummy rounds. In this case, I'm going to be looking at a traditional Glock dummy round, condition 4. Condition 4, magazine out, nothing in the chamber, fully unloaded. This is how you store and transport handguns. Condition 3, very similar to 1911. You have a loaded magazine in the handgun, nothing in the chamber. Again, this is Israeli carry. This is what some people prefer to carry at. But again, in order to do that, when you draw, you have to cycle the action as part of your drawing process to make the gun ready to fire. So moving down to the conditions, there is no condition 2 because of course there is no exposed hammer, and there is no condition 1 because there is no manual safety. So you go immediately from condition 3, which is magazine loaded, no round in the chamber, to condition 0, which is magazine loaded, round in the chamber, cocked, ready to go, ready to fire. And this is how many people, if not most people now, carry striker fires without manual safeties today. Not everybody is comfortable with doing this, but this is what is referred to as condition 0. If you are not comfortable carrying in this condition, again, your other option is condition 3, loaded magazine, nothing in the chamber, and then you have to cycle it. Now, the third option is a striker fire pistol, in this case with the P365 with a manual safety. And again, using dummy rounds, got one in here. Condition 4, magazine out, nothing in the chamber, right? That's how you store and transport. Condition 3, magazine loaded, no round in the chamber, Israeli carry, similar to what we saw before. There is no condition 2 because there is no trigger. However, unlike the Glock, there is a condition 1, which means you can now put a round in the chamber and have the manual safety up. So this is magazine loaded, round in chamber, manual safety on. Now the final option you have here is condition 0, and that would mean magazine loaded, round in chamber, hammer cocked, manual safety off. And this is how a lot of people carry without the manual safeties. Now one of the benefits of a 365 is it creates a little bit of a hybrid, because a lot of times traditionally you can't cycle around into a handgun with the safety on, but you can do that with the 365, and I have the links down below to the reviews on the 365. But if you carry it, for example, and you have the safety on, you can still cycle around in and keep that safety on. So you can put it from condition 3 to condition 1 while still having a safety on. So that's one of the additional little benefits of a 365 that you might not otherwise get with a lot of other striker fired handguns. So again, your options are carrying this in condition 3, where you have to draw and cycle, or you can carry it in condition 1, which is with the round in the chamber, loaded magazine, manual safety up, or condition 0, which is the loaded safety off. So those are the major conditions and considerations when looking at how to carry your handguns. So the final thing I would tell you is, when you're considering all of these types of things, one of the things I usually suggest to people is, if you're comfortable carrying a condition 1 with your manual safeties, or in this case with the 1911s, etc., But if you're not comfortable carrying that way, think about your threat environments that you work in and how you're training around that. So if you're in a high to medium threat environment, then it probably makes sense to carry in conditions like condition 1 and even condition 0 on your Glocks, right? Because that might be a real difference between life and death if you're in a anticipated high threat environment. If you're in a low threat environment where you really don't anticipate needing to use your handgun much at all, then maybe you want to carry a more safer condition, which is condition 3. The only difference is you need to remember how to draw and cycle your weapon within that condition. And the nice thing about, at least with carrying condition 3 or Israeli carry, is if you move from a low threat environment to a high threat environment, you can always still charge your handgun and move it from a condition 3 down to a condition 1 or condition 0 based upon the threat environment you're in. You just need to be able to train for both of those types of environments and how to be able to effectively use your gun in a muscle memory type situation. So those are some of the things you want to think about when it comes to the conditions of carrying your handgun, and more importantly, what kind of handgun do you want to buy based upon the conditions that you're most comfortable carrying within. If you like this video or like our channel, please subscribe on YouTube, and thanks for watching.